Hello, all. Garland Nixon here, hanging out with Scott Ritter on a Thursday morning. Very, very tragic occurrence happened in the U.S., and we're going to talk about that amongst other things. Let's talk. Hello, Garland Nixon here, and here with Scott Ritter. And we're going to get to the scottritter.com and all that stuff that we normally talk to, but we're going to start right out of the hole with the Charlie Kirk assassination. Let's start here, Scott. I got a lot of stuff I want to get on about, get into about, the implications of it, about the, potential motives, things of that nature. But before we do, I want to get your perspective. You're a military man, and you can comment on this. Law enforcement, but probably not the background's law enforcement, but I'm sure when it comes to snipers and things like that, I don't have the experience that you have. My immediate initial thought when I looked at it was, it's a professional. Now, maybe, and I'll tell you why. Number one, they only took one shot and it hit it. And normally a person, a drive-by, pop, 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 pop. Somebody shoots at somebody, they'll throw a lot of rounds at them to increase the chance of hitting them because they don't have the confidence in hitting it with one shot. A sniper's trained one shot, one kill. They're trained, put that shot down there and get the hell out of there, right? So it seemed to me that A, they took one shot and hit with accuracy and they were out of there. B, they seemed to be very good at getting out of the situation, like they had practiced or whatever, getting out of the situation quick. 200 yards. Now, as you know, for a professional, that's the average shot. 200 yards is not a long ways for a pro. But for the average, if you're going to tell me some guy just came off the street and, bought a rifle down at the local sporting goods store, you got to sight it in. You got to be pretty good to shoot with accuracy and with confidence from 200 yards like that. So my immediate inclination was to think that it was more of a professional shot as opposed to just some random, as we're hearing, just some lefty that decided to shoot him. Could possibly be. I lean 60-40, maybe even 70-30 towards someone who's a more professional, but I could be wrong. Your thoughts, Scott?
Well, first, I'll just start off with the caveat that we don't know anything.
Right, exactly.
Other than fragmentary data. The FBI this morning says they recovered a bolt-action rifle, which right off the bat, just so people understand, a bolt-action rifle is considered to be the most accurate, long weapon out there. So there's that. 200 yards, it's just point aim, point impact. There's no deviation. There's no adjustment. You don't have to put in windage or anything of that nature. So if you have a weapon that's zeroed, what you aim at is what you're going to hit. And this guy appears to be aiming for the head or the neck of Mr. Kirk and got him. The key thing here is that the person clearly scouted out the area of operations. They had a vantage point where they wanted to take the shot that was outside of the security envelope for Charlie Kirk. And they had an escape plan. It worked. They got away. This shows pre-planning. Now that doesn't, I'm not going to, amateurs are capable of pre-planning as well. So I'm not going to jump right off and say this is, a professional hit. But this is premeditated. I mean, this isn't, somebody going, Charlie Kirk's there. I'm going to get my weapon. I'm going to come up and I'm going to shoot the guy. This is somebody saying Charlie Kirk is going to be there. I'm going to scout this out. By scout it out, I mean, it could include a rehearsal. I don't imagine somebody going up, scouting out the place, to, the position to shoot from, and then just arbitrarily making a run for an exit. I think they timed everything. I think they had this all timed out. That's how you get away. and it also implies a knowledge of security cameras, locations of security cameras, that you scouted out an ingress egress route that avoided being picked up on security camera. Because normally in something like this, people would say, here's the security camera footage of the killer, we're putting all, but they ain't putting anything out, which tells me this guy avoided security cameras. They don't even have security cameras of the parking lot, or where cars coming in and out. I mean, again, this is the sort of thing that normally what you'd get is we're looking for a white 2004 Impala, California license plate, the driver is a white male, approximately 30, this tall. Here's a photograph or an artist's sketch of this. This is what we're looking for. There's nothing, which says that this person actually knew what they were doing, had thought it out. And that's not layman type stuff. I mean, people can read spy novels and people can do, but shows actual real understanding of how law enforcement investigations work, how you collect information in a law enforcement investigation. Now, the weapon has been found. There's a palm print on it. I don't know. Hopefully they can trace it, but I would imagine that if a person's this meticulous, that palm print might be a false flag, somebody else's palm print. Shoes. If this guy's this smart, he knows he left a footprint. If he's a size 10, he hopefully left a size 12 footprint. Extra pairs of socks, stick on a bigger shoe and walk around. Now we're into speculation right now. I'm just saying that the fact that they haven't caught this guy, the fact they haven't put out, this is what we're looking for. And then, I think when they get into the weapon, I'm sure that, it's going to be a weapon that's going to be untraceable or very difficult to trace. Again, I don't want to get into too much because I just don't know.
Right, we don't, yeah.
But the fact that they haven't caught a person, because they always catch somebody. I mean, the amateurs always get caught because they make amateur mistakes. This person hasn't been caught yet. And my guess is if he's this good,
he's out of the country.
He ain't anywhere near the United States of America at this point in time.
Yeah, I thought that too. I thought, that's it. There's a premeditation to the point where if somebody intends to do something like this, they're going to say, okay, this person goes to many, many venues. We can't go at this university that's in the middle of a city and it's here and there and there's cameras. We can't do it. You know what I mean? Where they select the particular venue based on all of this thing. And that's the first thing I thought. He's out of the country. It seems, again, we don't know. It could just be some person who hates it. We don't know. But the fact that they have so little, there are indications here that would lead one to believe it could be a professional hit. It looks like it, so we will see. I wanted to show you something that, again, made me think. Let me show you three things. Let's start with number one. This is a tweet by Charlie Kirk, Zelensky. We don't support you. Show some respect next time. You're an ungrateful, petulant child who is responsible for 1 million dead. That's a Zelensky. All right, that's one. Let me give you two. Ukrainian media celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder. Journalist, we look down here, ashamed that Ukrainian media celebrating Charlie Kirk's murder, on and on and on, right? Numerous comments welcome the shooting on social media and comments sections of Ukrainian news sites. Okay, let me give you one more. AI overview. This has been on Grok. This has been on various ones. Conservative active Charlie Kirk was added to the Ukrainian Mural Vets database in 2024 prior to his assassination in September 25. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying, you know what I mean, Scott? I'm not saying that that's what happened, but I'm saying that those kinds of things make a person look and say, it could just be some, they could tell us, oh, it's just some random blue-haired trans activist from Berkeley, California. We don't know. We don't know. But when I look at that kind of stuff, that's the danger of that kind of stuff. It makes me think about the potentials here for motivate. At least if I'm investigation, there's a motive I can look at.
Well, regardless of Mr. Kirk and his tragic death, murder, the Mere Torts list and a similar blacklist published by the Center for Countering Disinformation, works out of the office of the president of Ukraine, funded by the State Department, where they not only blacklisted American citizens, myself included, for saying things that the Ukrainian government finds objectionable. With the State Department's concurrence and funding, they had people like me labeled information terrorists, and then with the State Department's concurrence and funding, went forward to say, and by terrorist we mean the equivalent of a terrorist, and that all means should be used to stop these people, including the means used to stop terrorists. Basically saying that myself and everybody else on this list should be killed. And we know that the Ukrainians have acted on this. The high-profile murders of Maxim Tatarsky, the Russian blogger, Daria Dugina, were murdered. So why the United States allows the Ukrainian government to continue to promulgate, this assault on free speech. I mean, we have J.D. Vance holding the British and the Germans accountable for, silencing people and stuff. The Ukrainians are killing people and threatening Americans with death. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was on the Mere Torts hit list until suddenly they went, oops, mistake.
Rand Paul was. Senator Rand Paul was on the list at one point.
He's still on the list. Tucker Carlson's on the list. So again, Charlie Kirk aside, the U.S. government has to shut this down. There can be zero tolerance for any effort by a foreign government to suppress American free speech. Now, if I'm in somebody's country, I mean, for instance, one of the reasons why I don't travel to Germany and is because the German laws would prohibit me from exercising my free speech. Now, if I'm in their country and I know what their laws are, that's life. We can snipe at them. J.D. Vance can say we don't like these laws, but as an American, if I go to Germany and violate their laws, so sad, too bad. Same thing if I go to Russia. If I go to Russia and decide that I want to twerk in front of an Orthodox church, that might be freedom of expression here in the United States. It's against the law in Russia, and I'll be held accountable for it. And there's no crying. I can't sit there and go, oh my God, you're violating my I don't have free speech rights in Russia. I don't have free speech rights in Germany, but I do have free speech rights in the United States of America. And what the Ukrainian government is doing with the former concurrence and support and funding of the United States State Department is seeking to suppress that free speech by threatening life-ending consequences if I continue to do this. I was number one for months. I don't know what my status is today, but for a while I was the number one dude. They called me the number one threat to Ukraine. Scott Ritter is the number one threat to Ukraine. And when I was in Russia, they tried to kill me. Whether they do it here in the United States, I don't know. I hope not. But somebody killed Charlie Kirk. And, it's too early to say who, but one of the things that you have to do is put up a list of suspects. If you haven't, put up a list of suspects. And maybe the people who say they want to kill Charlie Kirk should be on that list. Maybe they should be on that list.
You do an investigation and you find that somebody, texted Charlie Kirk, you're going to get it. Somebody put up something on like this Charlie Kirk and just drew a circle with a line through it. This is literally what they did. I mean, when you're on Mirror Vets, they would literally draw like the circle, a line through the person after the person died. And it would say something like not terminated, but some word they would use like that. So you got an online a website with a person's picture on it. And they have terminated people whose pictures have been on that website, and the guy dies. And in that country, they're celebrating, hooray, he's gone, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? And you're like, I think we got. I'm just saying, from the perspective
Oh,
of
yeah.
investigators, I would say at least we have a suspect. We have a place to start, but they're not certainly gonna say that, even admit that. Can I say one other thing?
Yeah.
The guy who let me show you this real quick. This is why this stuff is so shady. And that is the last guy, Ryan Ruth, who, we're told he was on the fifth. Oh, Trump assassination attempt suspect Ryan Ruth can't see classified info relating to his case. Neither can we. Right? Judge Allen wrote in a ruling Friday that the United States has made a sufficient showing that the information at issue was classified and that its disclosure could, listen to this, cause serious damage or exceptionally grave damages to the national security of the United States. The court finds that the United States properly invoked the provisions of the Classified Information Procedures Act and its classified information privilege as to the information referenced in the classified order. So the last guy, who was a Ukrainian lunatic, who, by his own admission, helped bring mercenaries into Ukraine, who supposedly tried to kill Trump, the federal government, the court has now sealed the evidence against this guy and said, well, if we showed that, it would cause serious damages or exceptionally grave serious damage or exceptionally grave damages to the national security of the United States. And if stuff starts to get, you got to start looking at this stuff and saying something's fishy here, Scott.
Yeah, I always thought that the whole concept of the American judicial system was to have open trials, jury of your peers, all the evidence presented, but that's not what happens. The United States government often hides behind a shield of secrecy. Again, it would be pure speculation as to what it is they're trying to hide, but I would imagine that it relates to his activities with Ukraine and the role played by the CIA, the DEA, and other entities in facilitating lethal assistance to Ukraine, whether it's material, personnel, training, whatever. And so that's what I think they're hiding. But that's just, again, speculation. We just don't know anything.
And they'll make sure that we never know, because they're saying that if we found out, it would cause grave damage to the national security of the United States if we knew what this guy's evidence was against this guy.
It's always curious. I always love when the U.S. government does that, because I've been involved in things a while ago where the U.S. government made similar claims, and the response was, "Are you sure you're not just saying that it would embarrass the hell out of America? I mean, can you really tell me what the grave national harm is? What you're saying is that the Secretary of State would be deeply embarrassed if the truth came out that she lied through her teeth. That's what you're saying. You're saying that the Department of Defense would be upset if they found out that they were part of an activity that went against the executive orders of the President of the United States. That would be embarrassing and perhaps a crime. But it doesn't present grave harm to the security of America." I think what we're going to find when these documents are eventually declassified, and they will be, whether it's 25 years from now, 30 years from now, is that there was no harm that could be done. It just was going to stop people from being embarrassed, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that goes on that gets classified today that has no right to be classified. It's classified only to save people from embarrassment. It has nothing to do with the legitimate national security of America. When we speak about intelligence, we protect sources and methods. That's it. We protect the sources and the methods involved. If the information that's collected by sources and methods can give away the source and method, then we shield it. We blend it with other information. We make some alterations as long as they don't change the final meaning. And if the information is so specific that it can only come from one source, then we exclude that information. That would literally be a case of protecting the national security of the United States. But so much of this information is just about embarrassing. Look at JFK. They redacted Israel from everything. It didn't have any impact on the national security. It saved Israel embarrassment and politicians embarrassment. We just didn't want people asking questions about the relationship between Israel and the United States. But that's not about national security. That's just embarrassment. It's a political decision. And right now we have a lot of classification decisions being made on politics, not on national security.
I'll say this too, okay. As I always said, I don't care if it's Charlie Kirk. I don't care if it's Garland Nixon. I don't care if it's the chairman, the leader of the Communist Party of America, the Ku Klux Klan, the Libertarian Party of America, the whatever, any party of America, anything, whether I agree with it or not, a person should have rights and protection to say whatever they want. It appears to me that this was directly related to Charlie Kirk's speech, whether it was a person or a professional hit, which I lean towards, of course, that the message is clear. Because you know what? Everybody's out there saying, holy crap, I may speak at a peace rally. I may speak at this. Somebody may go to you know what I mean? So what it does, it chills the speech of people that I don't agree with, people that I would say that's a terrible thing for that person to say. But I would defend that person's right to say it. And then I have a right to rebut it and say, that's a bunch of crap for this reason. And both of us should be able to say that. And that's the intellectual and philosophical and political discussion, rich discussion that allows people to make good decisions, right? This is something that just really puts a hurting on that.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time when I got a very, very, very specific death threat. I mean, extremely explicit, and it required me to do things to secure myself and my family. And then after a while, you go through, but after a while, the urgency of the moment went away and all that. But to this day, I still do certain things just to safeguard against that very specific death threat. But the bottom line is, if they want to kill you, they're going to kill you. I mean, especially if they want to shoot you. Right. I don't have a personal security detail. I can't put counter snipers out on the roofs. I can't screen traffic back and forth. The FBI doxed me, so everybody knows where I live, and everybody knows the details of my, how to approach my home. So what do I do? Move? Live in fear? No. But it's something that you have to think about now. I'm scheduled to do public speaking several times in the next month, outdoor venues, and you're just like, really? Diane Sayre, Diane, she just had a very specific death threat made against her as well. And what I think is happening is, these copycat intimidators, I'm going to call them. I think people are just basically saying, oh, we're going to scare people by, making these death threats. But, first and foremost, Charlie Kirk's murder is a tragedy. It's a human tragedy. Whether you like this guy or not, it's irrelevant. Exactly. Married to a woman who loved him, and he had 2 wonderful children. And for all reports, he was a wonderful husband and a loving father. And this family has been devastated by this. Charlie Kirk was, I call, the living embodiment of the power of free speech. I mean, because I'll tell you what, I always laugh when people, I hate Charlie Kirk. Why? I hate what he's saying. Okay. But do you disagree with it? Yes, I do. Can you come up with a better argument? I mean, because Charlie Kirk's out there kicking your ass. Charlie Kirk's out there, he goes to college campuses where, supposedly the most educated people in America are receiving their education. And he just wipes the floor with these guys because he has, I'm not going to say better ideas, but better arguments. He presents his data convincingly. It's difficult. Many people have the inability to rebut him, right on the spot. And so they get frustrated. They get angry at Charlie Kirk. I myself, I've watched this. I disagree with so much of what he says, but I watch him, and it's like a training video. It's like, scouting out, your boxing opponent. You watch films of their fights, and you're going, holy crap, this guy's good. Look at that jab. Look at that. Look at that. Oh man, he's got a knockout punch there. Charlie Kirk knows what he's doing. He's a professional at speaking, at arguing. And you can actually learn so much by watching his videos about how he packages his arguments, how he delivers his arguments, how he withholds data for the counterpunch, how he sets you up by saying this so that you fall into this argument as opposed to putting forward this argument. The guy was a genius in how he did this kind of debate. And that's why I call him a freedom of speech, a pioneer, because he was what free speech is all about. The ability to articulate arguments. And it's our duty and responsibility, if we disagree with him, to do it better than he does.
Wait.
That's what free speech is about. It's a battleground of ideas. And we want to have debate, dialogue, discussion. And if you can't hook and jab with Charlie Kirk, then you don't belong in the boxing ring. And I'm sorry to say, that's just the reality. And what Charlie Kirk proved was the intellectual laziness, the sloth that exists in America today, because he is wrong on so much. But people are so intellectually lazy. They don't want to do the work, the research. I don't know what his daily life was, but I can't imagine that Charlie Kirk just walked in to a forum and did it off the cuff. I imagine that he did his research about the topic he wanted, that he had a strategy involved. And that's why I say this guy is a pioneer who should be studied by everybody. Not because you agree with his ideas, but you have to study how he presented his ideas, because that's half of what free speech is about. It's not just your ability to spew facts, but it's your ability to influence people. And Charlie Kirk could influence a hell of a lot of people because he was very convincing in his presentation. And that's what made him dangerous. We don't know what the motivation is, but if you killed Charlie Kirk to silence Charlie Kirk, what it proved is that you were unable to have better ideas. And so you killed him, you murdered him. And again, that's not just intellectual weakness, that's moral depravity. But here in the United States, I'm a big free speech proponent. And yes, everybody has a right to say what they want, but understand this. If you say something that's controversial, people are going to come after you. And if you can't defend what you say, free speech doesn't require people to listen to you. Free speech doesn't require people to agree with you. And so you can be out there speaking what you say is free speech and the truth, but if you can't do it convincingly, you might as well be pissing in the wind. Charlie Kirk could do it convincingly. And in that way, he was a danger to all the people who were ideologically opposed to it because they couldn't beat him in a debate.
Well, I'm like this. Okay, I've got a YouTube show, or anybody can get a YouTube show. Anybody in the chat, anybody, if you want one, you can just sign up, YouTube or Rumble or whatever, right? You don't have to pay anything. You can do it. I could do this. Here's what Charlie Kirk said, and put up a video of Charlie Kirk and saying, this is why it's wrong, and this is what I think about it. You know what I mean? To me, that's what's free speech. I got heat when I was with the ACLU, which used to be a good organization. Why? And I've said this a million times. The KKK requested a permit in Annapolis, Maryland, to have a march, and Annapolis denied it. I was on the board, and we said, we'll sue you. You can't do that. And people are like, but they're the KKK. The First Amendment says you can't deny that based on their views. I find their views repugnant, but I'm not willing to give up my First Amendment rights for the KKK, because as soon as you take those rights because of them, I lose them too. And I went on TV all over Baltimore and Annapolis, and people got mad at me. And I said, I'm not changing. This has nothing to do with the KKK. I said, look, if you want to oppose them, you put in for a permit, and you can have a counter protest and say they're wrong. Guess what? I would defend your rights. It doesn't matter. They're saying something that gives you an opportunity to rebut. You can say anything you want. You can say, America's racist, and this proves it. If that's what you feel that you need to say, I would defend your right to say that. But we must respect the importance of an intellectual discussion of anything. We should be, whatever it is, we should be able to talk about it, right? And so that's my position with Charles. All these people, well, he said this and he said, it's not what he said. The power is in the right to say it. And when you respect his right or anybody else's right to say something, with it comes your right to rebut it. And if you don't rebut it, don't blame him for saying it. It's terrible. Okay, you think that was terrible. What did you do? What did you say? Did you write something? Did you go online? Did you write a op-ed to the letter? What did you do? If you feel that he said something that was wrong and you did absolutely nothing to rebut it, then you shut up. He's got a right to say it, but you got a right to push back on it. That's my position. It has been my position.
No, I agree with you 100%. But I'm committing a mortal sin. I'm eyeballing the chat. But I just love people, because here we are talking about if somebody says something you don't agree with, you'll come back, Ritter's a clown. That's good, guys. That's a good,
exactly. Go ahead.
Scott Ritter's a racist. Oh, well, there you go. Could you substantiate that? I mean, you're just making my point. This is the point. Everybody has a right to speak. The people in your chat obviously have a right to write what they want. But, if you think what you're doing is advancing your cause, I mean, maybe Scott Ritter is a jerk. Maybe Scott Ritter is a racist. But the way you do it isn't to shout that out, it's to substantiate it with sound, reasoned arguments that can withstand pushback through debate, dialogue, and discussion. And this is what people forget. Free speech, yes, everybody has a right to free speech, but this is the point I was trying to make earlier. I don't have an obligation to listen to you. I don't have an obligation to give you the time of the day. What you need to do when you speak freely is to ensure that you package your thoughts in a manner that is approachable to people. I mean, people hate Charlie Kirk because he was a hell of an influencer. I mean, he just did it better than everybody else. He's a propagandist. Well, aren't we all in one way or another?
Exactly.
I like to consider myself to be a propagandist for the truth. Charlie Kirk was just really, really good at what he did. You don't have to agree with the substance of what he did, but he was really good at it. That's why I say, if you believe in free speech, you should study Charlie Kirk, because he was a very effective, employer of free speech for his cause. And I think that's what put a target on him. I mean, this guy, influenced millions of people, for better or for worse. Again, like I've said, I find fault with much of what Charlie Kirk says and does, but I watched his videos not because I was cheering him on, but I study my enemy. I mean, Charlie Kirk was an ideological foe for much of what I stand for. But rather than me just sitting back, screw Charlie Kirk, he's an asshole, he's a moron, he's a racist pig, he's this, I study him and go, he made a point there that I disagree with, but he was effectively presented. And he presented in a way that sort of made it difficult to rebut at the moment. So it appears as though he won the argument, even though he didn't. How, if confronted with this in the future, would I respond to deflect his response and get to the heart of what I'm trying to do? Because that's how you have effective free speech, is to think through what you're trying to say, the points you're trying to make, and then back them up with fact and effectively present them. Charlie Kirk was very good at what he did. And no matter how much you disagree with him, nothing he did deserved the death penalty. Nothing. No. And that's what happened. Somebody played judge, jury, and executioner with Charlie Kirk.
And, the other thing is this. Charlie Kirk was a, very pro-Israel guy. But then not long ago, he came out and he started saying, October 7th, I don't know. It seems like they knew it was good. He started asking questions like, man, I think he said, there's video of him saying, I find it hard to believe that they didn't know it was going to happen and things of that nature. So you could look at that and say, well, there could be people that could have a motive for him, saying stuff. The other thing I learned, and I'll say this, not to go too far on this, we got other things, but I'll say one last thing. I learned something when I went to Fox News in 2010, and I'll tell you what it was. At that point, I'm a recovered, have long recovered, but I was a Democrat back then. And what did I learn? These Republicans are evil people. They're terrible. They're horrible. They're mean. They're just, they eat babies, right? And I went to Fox, and I met people and talked to them that I watched on Fox that I disagreed with. And like I became friends. I went on Tucker Carlson's show, and oh my God, he's evil. And I remember coming away thinking, man, that Tucker Carlson's a nice guy. I really like him. Didn't agree with some of the stuff he said, some of the stuff I did, but I remember thinking he's just one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, right? And I got friends there, and that's when I realized something. I've been told that people who I have ideological differences with are evil, vicious monsters that I should hate. And these are some pretty nice people. Not every one of them. It's like anything. Some are assholes. Some of them are really nice people that I could be very good friends with and was friends with. And that's the other part. That people are like, hey, he was bad. He was this. He was terrible. He was this. And you don't know. If you knew Charlie Kirk and met him and worked with him every day and went to friends, you might became friends. You might have said, you know what? I disagree with a lot this guy says, but I sure like him. And that's the other part of it. We're taught to hate people that we disagree with. And a lot of times you sit down and you get to meet people that you completely disagree with on a lot of things or some things a lot. And you're like, I disagree with that person a lot, but I really like them. And that's this demonization and hatred. Charlie Kirk, I hate him. You don't know him. You can't hate him. He might have been a jerk. He might have been the nicest guy you ever met. But we're brainwashed to hate people if we have some serious disagreements with them.
Yeah, look, I've run into this in the case of RFK Jr. I really like RFK Jr. I've met him. He's a nice guy, funny as hell. I mean, you can't sit down and have a meal with RFK Jr. and not end up just laughing. The guy is funny, a wicked sense of humor, intelligent. I disagree with him on so much, especially Israel. I mean, it's the kind of disagreement that I just can't even discuss the issue with him because I view him as a friend, and I just don't want to go down that path. I disagree with him on other things, but I like him. He's not a bad human being. He's a good human. He has a kind heart. But the second I say that, oh man, I get attacked like you would. I'm not even going to look at the comments right now because I'm sure they're like, oh, you're RFK Jr.'s this, that, and the other thing. No, as far as I'm concerned, he's a nice guy. I would have a beer with RFK Jr. any day of the week.
Yes.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to march with him the next time he goes out with Rabbi Shmuley and waves the Israeli flag. I'll probably be across the street with the Palestinian flag because I disagree with him on that issue. But that doesn't make him evil. That doesn't make him bad. Now, there are some people who are evil and who are bad.
Yes.
Rabbi Shmuley. I wouldn't sit down with him, call him a nice guy. I think the guy's actually fundamentally evil. There's other things, but who knows? If I had ever met Charlie Kirk in a casual environment, might have liked him. Might have said, "You're a funny guy. You got a good sense of humor. I like the way you treat your family. You're very respectful to your wife. You're a good father to your children. I like the way you interact with your community. I mean, I watch you walk down the street, and if you see a neighbor's garbage can tipped over, you don't walk by. You pick it up, put the garbage in, put the lid on it to keep your neighborhood clean. I mean, these are the little things that tell you what's in the heart of people. I've never met the guy, so I don't know. But I agree with you. There's people out there. We allow perceptions to be shaped by others. We allow our perceptions of people to be shaped by others, many of whom haven't met the people in question, who are drawing their own conclusions based upon their narrow focus of ideology, and they make horrible comparisons. I'm just going to turn it off because I'm.
The chat. There's trolls. There's trolls. I believe like, there's paid trolls
Goebbels,
in there.
He's the same as Goebbels. No, he's not. Goebbels Hitler petted dogs too.
Brilliant. Hitler had a nose. He has a nose.
Yeah,
they're exactly alike. So let's move on to this sad and pathetic business about a drone. And I'm like, they're like, the Russians targeted. I'm like, dude, if the Russians targeted Poland, there wouldn't be much of a if they decided,
Poland would know it.
Yeah, they had to take, if they said we got to hit Poland, Arestniks would have rained down. Every military base in Poland right now would be reduced to basically its basic genetic elements, right? But it seems to me like there's either a total false flag or just, some drone guy, electronic warfare wandered out into to me, it's just a joke. It's pathetic. And they're like, Article 4. What is Article 4? We get together and talk. You've been getting together and talk in Paris, in London, and the coalition of the idiots every other week. It's just such a propaganda outlet. Article 4, the Russians are scared to death. You're going to institute Article 4, and a bunch of idiots are going to sit around a table and say, what do you think we should do? We don't have any men or weapons. Let's ask the United States again. And they'll say, no. It's a stupidity, Scott.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, Article 4, it's funny, Mark Rutte gave his, Secretary General of NATO, gave his little presentation. And I am proud to say that Dutch F-35s intercepted a drone. Wow. So a $35-40 million aircraft intercepted a $20,000 drone.
170 million. 170 million now is what an F-35 goes for.
All right. It's like Bitcoin. It goes up in value.
Yeah.
Good thing I bought it early. We had an Italian, AWACS over the skies. We had, Polish F-16s. We had this, that. I mean, that's already Article 4. Basically, all Article 4 does is have other NATO members go, we'll come to your assistance. We'll provide you military assistance to deal with this threat. The threat is 7 to 18 drones, depending on, who's counting. The only debris that's been publicized is a Ukrainian-made Shahed 136 knockoff that plowed into a Polish field. So there's a photograph of that. But the Belarusians, they're the ones I go to on this one because they're the only ones that are responding without emotion. I mean, the Russians, gave sort of a coy, if our drones went in there, it wasn't to we weren't seeking to destroy any targets inside Poland. Meaning, if we were, you'd know it. But the Belarusians were like, look, there were drone operations taking place. The Russians were launching drones. The Ukrainians were launching drones. And several of these drones deviated into our territory and were heading towards Poland. We believe that this was done as a result of electronic warfare. And we notified the Poles about the trajectory, the flights, so that they could take the appropriate actions. So what the Poles are leaving out and what NATO's leaving out is the intercept took place because Belarusians guided them to the targets in question. But it's interesting what the Belarusians said about electronic warfare, because this is something that a lot of people haven't looked at. The Ukrainians, when the Russians started using the Shahed 136 uranium-2 drones and the various derivatives thereof, the Ukrainians were trying to come up with ways to protect themselves from this. And one of the things they came up with was a system that was developed in late 1983, fielded in early 2024, I believe called Pokrovka. That might not be the perfect pronunciation because I'm not good at pronouncing words, even English. But Pokrovka is an electronic warfare system. It's not, one thing here, one thing there. There's thousands of these sensors that are laid out in an array throughout Ukraine. And the whole concept of Pokrovka is, as a Shahed 136 comes in, their job is to saturate it with signals that seek to block whatever guidance it's getting from the Russians, overwhelm that and replace it with new guidance provided by the Ukrainians. And then the Ukrainians seek to take over the drone. This is what Pokrovka is designed to do. It's not simply blocking and all. It's designed to capture the drone, initially to capture and crash. But the problem is they crashed it, and the drone would fly into Ukrainian apartment buildings and things. And that's when the Ukrainians, the Russians are attacking us. No, you crashed the Russian drone because you took it over. So then what they did is they developed it further so you could not just take it and crash it, but take it and land it in a field. You could guide it away from populated areas and bring it down. And once they mastered that ability, what they started doing is turning the drone around and sending it back to Russia. And in the last few months, there's more than 100 documented cases of the Ukrainians capturing a Shahed 136 uranium-2 type drone and turning it around into Russia. So now what appears to have happened is that they captured a certain number of Russian drones. And instead of turning them around into Russia, they diverted them into Poland. This was purely a Ukrainian operation. The Russians had nothing to do with this. Now, the fact that they have some Ukrainian drones, sprinkled in there, I don't know enough about Pokrovka to understand. Did they accidentally capture some of their own drones and send them in, because they have a variety of drones up there doing things for Ukraine as well. But there was a mix apparently of Ukrainian and Russian drones, according to the Belarusians, that were diverted through Belarusian airspace into Poland. And just so people understand how complicated this is, what's going on right now in drones is normally, it started out as normal, just simple radio frequency, or GPS signal, a single signal. And all you had to do is identify that signal, jam that signal, and the thing went dumb. So what's happening now is that the Russians are using AI, and they have multiple transmission devices. And the AI generates an algorithm, and it hops. So as it's flying, it's hopping the frequency, changing the frequency, and it's syncing up with the ground control station that uses the same AI generator, and they commute. And so what the Ukrainians have to do now is break into that. This is why they have so many sensors. They break into that, and then they use AI to reverse engineer that algorithm, and they get that handshake, and then they take over and do it. This is high-tech stuff. I mean, right. And the Russians are doing it to the Ukrainians as well. I mean, we're in a level of warfare that lay people just don't understand. Very complicated stuff. But here's the thing. To do that, the amount of energy that you're transferring, this isn't a weak signal coming from Pokrovka. Pokrovka is overwhelming, is bursting through, jamming high. That's high-powered intensity. It is detectable. And flying over Ukraine, over that area, whether it's satellites, whether it's aircraft, whether it's remote, the United States and NATO are detecting every single signal there is. So this is the point I'm trying to make. We know damn well what happened.
Yeah.
What NATO is doing right now is an act of theater. They know without a shadow of a doubt that Ukraine captured the drones and redirected them to Poland. They know this because they have the evidence, they have the data, and that's why this is such a comedy of errors here. Because all this Article 4, all this posturing, it's pre-programmed, it's pre-done. They knew this was happening, and now they're responding based upon a script.
Yeah, and see, and there goes the propaganda. NATO's first battle with Russian drones inside its own borders puts alliance on defensive. You know what I mean? So it's obvious that this, to me, is simply part of a information influence operation. The truth is this: not the Poles nor anyone else in NATO has any ability in any way to confront Russia, militarily in any way, shape, or form. Well, they just want to drag the US in there. So they're doing propaganda. They're trying to hide the fact that Ukraine is getting absolutely battered on the front lines, and they've been getting nothing but bad news and bad press every single day. And I think it's just an attempt that we got to change the narrative. We're on the offensive. We're fighting the drone war, and we're winning. We're taking out drones. The Russians are attacking us with drones, and it's just garbage to me. Because on the only place that counts, I always said, as I told you, my brother was special ops. He retired. And he used to always say in the end, if you want to win a war, whatever, he used to always say the only thing that really matters in the end, a man with a rifle. You got to put guys on the ground. You got to take territory. You got to hold territory. You got to police the territory. You got to have people you can't bomb your way, drone your way. Ultimately, you got to have a man with the rifle. That's the person that wins or loses a war or holds ground or whatever, right? And Russia, they just ain't got it, and Russia does. So anyway, we are almost out of time. So I wanted to hit one more thing before we go to scottritter.com. And that is your thoughts on the Doha, the unsuccessful Qatar attack. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this, but your thoughts on it.
Well, first of all, I am dismissive of any declaration by the United States that we didn't know anything about this.
Preposterous.
I want to, back in 1991, I'm dating myself, we had a little war with Iraq at the time, a Desert Storm. And the Israelis were very worried about Iraqi Scud missiles that were being launched from Western Iraq into Israel. And Israel wanted to send in commando teams and fighter aircraft to take care of the problem because it said America and the Brits aren't doing a good enough job. One of the issues that came up is how do we make this happen? How do we get Israeli aircraft into Western Iraq at a time when American aircraft are in Western Iraq, and how do we deconflict? And one of the things that's required is that you have to share your IFF codes, your identify friend foe codes, so that when you start squawking, we pick it up and we know that you're a friend and not an enemy, not try and not to shoot you down. Our air defense doesn't lock onto you, the whole thing. And this was a big deal, deconfliction. And I've been through a deconfliction exercise in real world involving Israel and American aircraft. Eventually, we told the Israelis, no, you don't get to fly. We will, try to handle this problem. But the problem stays the same. People do have to know that from Al Udeid and from other air bases, the United States launches multiple combat sorties a day into Syria and Iraq. We have American ground troops both in Syria and Iraq. If these ground troops, especially in Syria, are attacked, we have combat air patrols drilling holes in the sky, ready to come in and drop ordnance in support of them. So we have American aircraft over the airspace of Syria and Iraq. And this includes not just the fighter bombers, but electronic warfare aircraft, airborne warning and control aircraft, AWACS, refuelers. We got our tankers up there doing their thing. And we have combat air patrol to protect the tankers in case somebody sends the fighter airplane up against them, like Iran. And so we've got this whole architecture in place over the skies of Syria and Iraq. How did 15 Israeli aircraft get from Israel to off the coast of Qatar? They took off and they flew through Syria. Then they went into Iraq and they came down through the Al Fal Peninsula, that little narrow territory of Iraq, into the Gulf, and they headed straight to Qatar and Doha, and they released their missiles. We knew about this. Not only did we know about it, but we had to coordinate with them because we had to deconflict the airspace. There had to be an exchange of IFF. We had to get our planes out of their way. They had to set up refueling patterns over Western Iraq with their own combat air patrol over that. And so we had to clear, divert, redirect. We coordinated the airspace because Israel was carrying out a complex air operation using the same airspace that we were carrying out complex air operations. So there was deconfliction taking place. Why do you think the commander of CENTCOM showed up in Israel a couple of days ago? It was to make sure that there was deconfliction, because it was done at the same time that Donald Trump told Hamas, you have to consider my proposal. At that same time, Donald Trump asked the leadership of Qatar to invite Hamas to Qatar for negotiations. And we knew that Hamas had accepted this because the Qatari government briefed us on this. So we had the timing down, and the head of CENTCOM went to Israel to ensure that we had deconflicted the airspace. The notion that Israel could fly strike aircraft on a strike profile towards Qatar and slip under our radar is absurd in the extreme. The notion that they could launch these missiles and not be detected is absurd in the extreme. A couple things had that. Again, I just asked people, what do you think about the civilian aircraft that were flying in the area? Because there was no NOTAMs issued. There was no notice to aircraft. Because normally when you're going to carry out an action, and we saw this during the 12-day war, NOTAMs were issued, space was cleared because combat aircraft were on the move. How did, if we knew this was happening, and yet we continued to allow civilian aircraft to operate in an environment where if we normally detected, what if the Iranians had taken 15 aircraft and flew an attack profile against Al Udeid and launched missiles? We would immediately engage using our air defense. Our air defense didn't lock on to the Israelis. Our air defense didn't engage the missiles, not because they slid under it, because we turned it off, because we were culpable. How did the Israelis, approach? We know that Israel in the past has used tight formations and then squawking different codes to simulate civilian airline traffic. And so my guess is that the Israeli strike planes flew in a tight formation that replicated the radar signature of a civilian aircraft, and they squawked out using a code that simulated civilian air traffic, and they entered the pattern going into Doha, and then they deviated at pre-approved time and fired on a trajectory that would avoid civilian airplanes and allow them to egress. Very tightly controlled, very carefully controlled. Nobody's talking about this. Have you heard anybody talk about civilian air traffic and how they don't want to talk about it? Because to talk about it gives away the tactics used by Israel, which they've used in the past. The United States knew about this. We were complicit in this. We committed perfidy by encouraging Hamas to travel to Doha. I don't know the extent to which the Qatari government was aware of this. I don't trust anybody anymore at all. The Turks appeared to be honest brokers. There's a large Turkish military presence in Qatar. A lot of people are unaware of that, but there's a Turkish military base. And on that base, the Turks have their various intelligence capabilities. And I'm fairly certain that the Turks picked up on the fact that there was a strike coming in. So they informed Hamas, because the Hamas leadership came from Turkey to Qatar. And according to the reports, these guys left their phones where they were and fled. They said to pray, because you don't want to give away the fact they had an intelligence tip-off. But they now it's curious when you speak about the phones there. This means, and again, knowing what I know about the Israelis, they wouldn't have done something like this without eyes on target. When they took out I'll butcher his name, Muganea or something of that nature, the guy who blew up the Marine barracks, they killed him in Damascus. But before they made the authorization for the strike, they had eyes on target. They confirmed where he was, what he was doing. I think they blew him up with a car bomb. But before they, gave the green light to blow up that car bomb, they had to confirm that's where he was, make sure that the area was clear. But they physically had assets right there in Damascus who had eyes on target. They would have done the same thing here. They would have eyes on target. And they're monitoring the phones. They're tracking the phones. They're tracking the phone signals. This was a very sophisticated operation. In the United States, what we learned in the Damascus incident is that the CIA was also working with the Israelis, that what they saw, we saw. And I would imagine that the CIA was working with Israel as well, that there was CIA connectivity here. They were involved in the tracking of Hamas. They were involved in the deconfliction on the ground. They were involved in buying off or otherwise coercing elements of the Qatari government and security services, just to make sure that people got away, that, certain doors were open, certain gates were closed, certain eyes were closed, certain cameras were turned off. This was all carefully coordinated. This wasn't a unilateral action on the part of the Israelis. If it was, Qatar, you don't get in and out of Qatar if they close down the space. So you have Israelis with eyes on target. They don't leave. They get caught if this was truly a unilateral thing. But it wasn't. It was coordinated with the Qatari government. That's my take on it.
I think so. Well, and they flew over airspace of Saudi, other countries. It was, everybody knows the story on these governments. They're wholly captured by the U.S. and British, and they're plausible deniability. Oh, we didn't know that was happening. We're very angry. We'll have to issue a sternly worded tweet or something like that. That's what you're going to get. The other part of it is, again, it says something. You got to be out of your mind if you think you're going to do a bargain with these guys. Who at this point, if Trump said to me, Garland, I'd like to negotiate with you something. Can you meet me Thursday at the Starbucks? No. Oh yeah, I'll say I'm there. Yeah, no, and I'll give my worst enemy, somebody that I hate. Here, take my phone.
Hey,
Zelensky.
Scott, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you go to Starbucks for me? Pick up the.
Well, here's what I'd say. Hey, Zelensky, you want to borrow my phone? Yeah, just use that. I'll be give you $100 over at Starbucks Thursday because I already know they're blowing up wherever the phone is going to get blown to smithereens. Nobody's going to do business with them anymore. I'll tell you this though, they're not crazy. I'll tell you why. All of this business about yes, if Putin comes to Alaska, they're going to execute him. No, they weren't. They were going to take Putin out because they knew they'd get nuked. They knew that, you know what I mean? They know that Hamas, yeah, they're going to try to do all these other Iran, they're going to do dirty deeds. They wouldn't try to take out Putin and they wouldn't try to take out Xi because they understand the dynamics of power. They're not crazy. You know what it reminds me of? When Will Smith smacked what's the guy's name?
Chris Tucker?
No. Chris, whatever, the comedian, Chris Rock. And everybody's like, yeah, he's crazy. And he says, I just lost it. And I said, no, he didn't. I said, now, instead of Chris Rock, you put Dwayne The Rock Johnson up. If he'd have went up and smacked him, I'd say he lost it because he'd have got his ass kicked in about 10 seconds. He'd have been beaten mercilessly to a pulp. I will believe that he lost it if he goes and smacks some guy like The Rock. If he's smacking some guy half his size, no, he hasn't lost it. He's beating up on a guy because he's a bully and he's weaker than him. You take an ass whipping, I'll say you lost it. Some guy goes, and I'm going to go fight a bear. Now that guy's crazy because he's going to obviously lose. So the bottom line is they know
crazy or a Russian.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, there's the other part. Yeah, exactly. But thanks a lot, Scott. Oh, by the way, before we go, this is critical that we address what's happening at scottritter.com. Scott, fill everybody in. We're at scottritter.com. What do they need to know?
Well, now that I'm done traveling, I'm back to doing my my rants, my daily rants. I think today's topic will probably be Charlie Kirk. I also have the Russia House is going on. We just finished publishing the last of the interviews I did in Moscow, and now we're doing a series of new interviews. And Alexander Rogers is a guy that I recently interviewed. He's a finance minister or finance manager for the Donbass, for Lugansk, but he comes from Ukraine, and he's been involved in that area in the Donbass since 2014. It's fascinating conversation, not just about what's happening today, but what the future looks like. He's the guy that's involved in the economic planning. So we're doing that, and I am, preparing for, this Project 38. We got a documentary film that's in the midst of being produced, and there's also a component of that involves putting together a Team B, what I call a citizen engagement team. The goal of which is to gain an audience with either Donald Trump or his inner circle to talk about Russia and the need for arms control. I'm finishing up a paper that I hope to put out today that demonstrates how, Donald Trump is being poorly advised by the CIA and by others because they've been infected with Russophobia. So I'm making that case. I'm not saying that we should get rid of the CIA. We should, but what I am saying is that if Donald Trump's Tulsi Gabbard's out there right now exposing the criminal activity of the CIA and conspiring against the sitting president and the poor quality of their analysis when it comes to Russia. If you know that Donald Trump was briefed. Tulsi Gabbard pulled the security clearances of 37 people recently, I think August 25th. One of them was a very senior CIA Russia analyst named Julia Garganis. She was the national intelligence officer for Russia and Eurasia during the whole 2016 scandal. And she, at the time, was a very senior intelligence manager with the Russia Eurasia Center, Mission Center, so one of America's CIA's lead experts on Russia. She was briefing Donald Trump up until the moment he left for Alaska. She was John Ratcliffe's, the CIA director's go-to person to brief the president about Vladimir Putin, about Russia. And she's a Russophobe from day one. She's somebody who was complicit in what some are calling the criminal actions of 2016. She does not want peace with Russia. She does not want good relations with Russia. She does not trust Russia at all. And yet she's the one who's briefing the president before he meets with Vladimir Putin. Now, that's fine. But what I'm trying to do is put together a team that can provide a counter to that, a citizen engagement team of people who are true experts on Russia who aren't infected by Russophobia, who might be able to provide a competing alternative perspective about Russia that conforms with the president's policy objectives of improving relations with Russia. And so I'm heavily involved in that. And part of this requires traveling to Russia. I just traveled to Russia in August. I'm planning another trip in November. And I'm trying to get you to come along in that trip. And I would say that anybody who believes that Garland Nixon should go to Russia and should have the opportunity to empower himself with knowledge and information so that he can become a citizen engagement practitioner, influencing the policies that are critical to the national security, as all citizens should seek to do if they have knowledge and information, then help me get Garland to Russia. This requires, I'm going to be straight up, it's going to require $5,000 to $6,000 of donations. And we have between now and say November 1st to get her done. So if you're out there and you support Garland, go to scottritter.com, go to that donation button. I have frozen all of my donations at this point, meaning that all the money that's collected is right now. I'm saving it for you, Garland. So
thank you very much. And people
help me out, guys.
I'm doing the
$5,000
same.
to $6,000 to get Garland Nixon to Russia. So donate. Let's make this happen because this is important stuff. This is the kind of stuff that we have a window of opportunity today where the president of the United States appears to be cognizant of the fact that the CIA has been lying to him about Russia, that his closest advisors are infected with Russophobia. And if this president is serious about wanting better relations between the United States and Russia, he needs better advice. And he can get that advice from people like myself, Garland Nixon, and others who have empowered themselves with knowledge and information about the reality of Russia. And what we need to do is help Garland become a better Russia analyst. Garland's very good. I enjoy talking with Garland. I respect Garland's insights. But Garland, have you been to Russia yet?
No, I haven't.
So there we
hope to go in November.
Yeah. So there we go, guys. What you want to do is make sure that after November, when people say, "Well, Garland, have you ever been to Russia?" You can say, "Well, as a matter of fact, I have," and I can tell you that the program that is envisioned for Garland will be a spectacular program of empowerment of knowledge and information. He'll be meeting very interesting people, have the opportunity to interact with Russians of all walks of life, and he'll get to see Russia firsthand, so he can form his own opinions based upon personal experience, as opposed to listening to Scott Ritter about what Scott Ritter thinks about Russia. So that's a big deal. The reason why the Russians have offered to pay for everything, and it's a very kind offer, and I don't doubt the sincerity of the offer. But we live in times where, as journalists, we have to make sure that we do not provide any opportunity for anybody to say that we are Russian propagandists, that we are doing the bidding of Russia. The November trip is my initiative. Inviting Garland along is my initiative. And therefore, it's imperative that we pay for this, that this is paid for by ourselves, meaning by you, the supporters. So that when people say, well, if the Russians bought your airplane ticket, therefore you're beholden to the Russians to give them X, Y, and Z, you can say, no, we bought our own airplane ticket. We paid for our own hotel. We paid for our meals. And then we met and we talked with the Russians, that's why you're going to Russia, by the way. It's not a crime to meet and talk with Russians. That's sort of why you go to Russia. But we need your help to make this happen. This is very important to get as diverse a body of expert opinion educated about the Russian reality. And the best way to make that happen is to get these people to Russia. And right now we have a window of opportunity to get Garland to Russia. So I think we should make it happen.
All right. You can go to scottritter.com and hit the donations. Also, don't forget, I don't know what happened to my donations button there. Seems to have disappeared on me. There we go. Patreon.com, PayPal, Buy Me a Coffee, Cash App, all of that kind of stuff. And of course, I got a P.O. box if someone wants to mail a donation. Thanks a lot. And hopefully we will get Garland Nixon to Russia. Thanks a lot, Scott. I really appreciate it. And I really enjoyed our talk. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
Okay, Garland. Thanks.
All right, everybody. Whether you can or can't donate, it would be great. But make sure that you share this on all your social media platforms. We're out.